Welcome, students, to Professor Damage's Horror Sci-Fi class. We're all stuck inside because of the horrible pandemic. So this is how we will be conducting the classes until further notice. I'm going to tell you about this horror movie like I normally do in class. And then I'm going to have you watch the movie at home, either with a link, or you could go find it on Netflix or Amazon or whatever streaming service you have. And when you're done, you are going to email me at damage@fdu.edu. Yeah. And answer the questions at the bottom of the thing I sent you. How's that? So, since you're all stuck at home, it's perfect for you to watch a bunch of scary movies while you're not thinking about the scary stuff going on in the world. Okay, so today's movie is... okay, I'm going to drop the voice because it's too tough to do. Today's movie is Freaks. Directed by Todd Browning from 1932. It's based on a story by Todd Robbins. Freaks is the story of, well, sideshow performers, people with deformities and other weirdness, and what happens if you cross them. Yes, Freaks. This was written by Todd Robbins, who made a lot of weird pulp novels back in the early 1900s until 1930. A lot of his stuff had to deal with circus performers and other creepy stuff like that of the time. So it's kind of exploitative in that sense. Now let's talk about the world in 1932 that this movie was made. As we were previously discussing, we had just gotten out of World War I, first big World War. The soldiers were coming home deformed with injuries, and people didn't want to look at them. They were kind of creeped out by the whole thing. Also, for the mid-1940s and way until the 50s, circuses, which were the major form of entertainment at the time, had things called sideshows. And the sideshows would have, people swallow swords and spit fire, that kind of, weird stuff like they have today. But they also had what was called a freak show. And this was kind of creepy. This was people with deformities, conjoined twins, pinheads, the dog-faced boy who had like hair all over his face, those kind of people. And basically you would just kind of gawk at them. Sometimes they would do a performance of some sort, and people would pay for this. And it was weird. That's where you get the term freak from. It's still a shorthand for anybody who's monstrous or different, or somebody who's to be avoided. It's also shorthand for anybody who doesn't want to be part of society's norms. Kind of wear it as a badge of honor. If you call yourself a freak, or at least me and my friends, we find that a compliment. It's that kind of a thing. A bit about the director, Todd Browning. Ooh, hello. Hold on a second. Are you here? Oh, there was a cat. Where'd she go? Hold on a second. I want to show you something. This is Zilla, my teacher's assistant. Isn't she cute? Okay. Hi. Got my flashlight. Well, a little bit about Todd Browning. He ran away to join the circus at a young age. He found work as a barker, which is the person who sits out front of the circus tent telling people to come in. He had a bunch of weird jobs. He was a circus geek, which meant he would bite the heads off of chickens and live mice. He had a weird act where they would bury him in a coffin with a flashlight and some soda crackers, and they dig him up like 24 hours later. They had a tube or something so they could live, so they could breathe, and they dig him back up again. That was, entertainment. It was a weird world back then. And basically, at a certain point, he saw the opportunity of movies out in California. He became a stuntman, and he kind of went through the ranks. And he became a top director of horror films. He did all the early Lon Chaney Sr. films. He did London After Midnight. He did all these really trippy films. He did one film with the star of tonight's movie, Bobby Earls, the little guy, where he plays a murder. He's a dwarf, and he plays a murderous. He gets carried around a baby carriage, and he goes and murders people. It's really disturbing. And one of the big things that Todd Browning had done was he made the original Dracula back with MGM, and made a mint for him. And this is what kicked off the whole Universal Monsters thing. Frankenstein, Dracula, the Wolfman, Dracula was the first one, and Todd Browning had done it. And so he had a lot of cred. And at this point, Universal was the studio that was known for monsters. Well, MGM wanted to cash in on this. So MGM lured him away and said, hey, can you make a horror movie? And he said, yeah, I can make a horror movie. I got one that I really want to do. Now, Universal was happy to get rid of him because, well, Todd Browning was kind of a drunk and kind of insane. He would just show up to set drunk, start juggling things for no apparent reason. Sometimes he would take his false teeth out and fling them at people. Really, that's he was a character. So MGM said, hey, we want you to make a horror movie. And he said, yeah, I got one about my time when I used to work at the circus with all those sideshow performers. And they're like, yeah, do whatever you want to do. So what he does is he calls up all of the sideshow performers he knew back when he was in the circus. He got the top ones. And he got them to be in this movie. So what you're going to be seeing are people with real deformities. There's Johnny Eck, the half man. He's got no limbs below his waist, and he just walks around in his hands. There's Schlitzie, the pinhead, who is microcephalous. She's got a pointy head and just speaks gibberish. She's bizarre. Actually, you know what? Here's an interesting biography called Nobody's Fool about Schlitzie. It's a comic, as you can see. So, want to read a biography that's not with pictures. Yeah, there were Schlitzie, Daisy and Violet, the conjoined twins, who went on to make a bunch of movies and had a singing career because, well, they were connected at the side and they would sing. They were married to two different people in two different houses. There was Jojo the dog-faced boy. Prince Randon, the human worm. Harry Earls. Harry Earls was the little person in this. No makeup, folks. Real deformities. One of the other things I want you to think about is, how do you treat people with deformities now? Do you do it any differently? There's no sideshows, but there's television shows. There's that show about dwarves. There's different things where we like to make believe that we're more acceptable, but are we just gawking? Is that something that we do? This is something that you look at. Another thing is to watch this film and think about where your allegiances lie. When you watch this, are you laughing at the weird people? Do you start to feel good for them? Do you start to identify with them? And then when they start to get angry and dangerous, what do you think then? Because it happens. Side note. There was somebody called Zip the What Is It. He was called the Wild Man from Borneo. He's this little guy with a tiny head and this pointy thing. Story about him. He would speak in this weird language. P.T. Barnum exhibited the guy. Some of these people, by the way, were purchased. Kind of like slaves. they were bought and exhibited and kind of treated badly. And they were shown, him and his I think his brother was his manager. And P.T. Barnum showed him. He was in all these sideshows. He was a celebrity for what this was. He would bite the heads off of chickens. He had this little pointy thing on his head, his hair was up in a point. You could do, maybe I'll find a picture of him and put it up there. And he was a wild man. He would just do strange things. And that's what it was. And he did this for years and years and years, and actually made a lot of money. Ended up, his manager, who kind of was his guy who took him around and took care of his business, they made so much money that they bought a chicken farm here in New Jersey, in I think Clifton, and and on his deathbed, the last thing he said was, "We really fooled him, didn't we?" It's a whole lie, because he knew that the public wanted to just look at somebody weird, and he said, "You want weird? I'll give you weird." And that's what he did. So that's an interesting little story. Upon the release of Freaks, people freaked out. The public was outraged by this. They thought this was incredibly exploitative and horrifying. You know, they didn't realize this. In fact, while they were filming it, the head of MGM, his name escapes me, Samuel Goldwyn, came down and everybody was hiding from this set because they didn't want him to come down because they would lose it and shut the thing down. He came down, saw all this stuff, and he's like, "Wow, that's really good makeup." And he's like, "Well, no, it isn't." Shh. And everybody's like, "No, shut up. Don't tell him it's real." So this got released, and immediately the public was outraged. They recut it. The end had a castration scene, which is lost to time. And even when you watch this and see how disturbing it is, it had a castration scene to see how even more weird it would be. So basically, MGM just said, "The hell with this," and they hit it. I think they ordered a lot of the copies destroyed, or they just didn't release them. So it was gone. Ruined Todd Browning's career. Never made another movie. I think he made one movie again, called The Doll People. But really, he was gone. And years later, it kind of got taken up in midnight movies and on TV by the counterculture of the 60s. And you could see where people who feel disenfranchised find this a good movie, and find this, speaking to them. It's actually in the National Film Registry, which preserves films of social significance. So strangely enough, he kind of got redeemed for this film. And when you see it, it really is different. It's not a horror movie so much, that there's monsters and ghosts and stuff, but it's the horror of thinking about what it is to be like these people. The sideshows kind of got shut down after a while. And the sideshow performers got very upset because they didn't have any more, work. If you're severely deformed and and it's back in the olden days when they didn't take care of people, how were you to make a living? And they were very upset when the sideshows closed because people were like, "Hey, they're exploiting these people." And he's like, "Yeah, please exploit us. We need the money." So it was kind of an interesting time capsule of that time period. As we watch this, think about, we're watching something from the 1930s where it was a thing to watch dwarves and people with deformities and go, "Ooh, look at them." But do we do that now? I know for a fact that, there's shows like on TLC, Little People LA, and all sorts of other stuff where you're looking at the struggles of people. And on the one hand, you want to look at the struggles and go, "Wow, that's really amazing. I wish, but for, the grace of God go I, would I do better?" Or are you looking at them because you find it entertaining and it makes you feel better about yourself when you see somebody who's got it worse than you? it's kind of human nature. Do people act like that? Do you act like that? Are we more enlightened now, or is it just a little bit different? I'll warn you, the sound is really bad. You might want to use subtitles for this because, the recording, this is like at the beginning of sound. So it's very scratchy. I think the sound was recorded to a record. And most of the performers are just not really talking to people. It's supposed to be a silent movie. But most of the people who talk just aren't really good at it. So there's that. Stuff I want you to look at while you're watching this film, students. Think about any similarities between your life and those of the characters of the film. Do you interact with people who are different? How do you interact with them? And see how the stuff flips in this film. Who are the real monsters in this film? What does it say about our modern world or the world of 1932 and how you treat people? That's the horror of this film. It's how people treat other people. It's an interesting film. You can't unwatch it, and believe me, you're going to enjoy it. Those of you who are taking my class, I know with this new pandemic and stuff, we're doing online stuff. I'm attaching this, pretty much everything I'm saying, written down. I got some fun links for you to check out. But what I need you to do, in lieu of you actually being in a classroom, is I want you to email me short paragraphs to these questions. I have the questions, I'm sending them to you. And I want you to email them to me by March 23rd. That'll be part of your homework now. So this way I know you actually listen to the blog or watch the movie. This way I have something. So in a short email, I want you to, and these are written in the thing I'm sending you, name a character from the film and how their character changed during the film. Number 2, what is a theme, metaphor, or analogy from the film? And 3, why did Venus want to kill Hans? And what happened to her at the end of the film? Reminds me of a joke. Hans, the trapeze artist, was going around jumping on the trapeze, and at one point he missed the trapeze. And somebody up top said, "Hey, look, Ma, no Hans." The dog-faced boy, the dwarf and the pinhead, all got in a car, got their car smashed into a pole. It was a freak accident. See, I'm being a horror host. I got to make bad jokes. Yeah, so let's see if there's anything else I needed to tell you before we show or you go look at the movie. There's a link right there to Freaks. It's public domain, so it's on every streaming service you could possibly think of. So just do a search for Freaks 1932. There's in the links. There's a cool comic about Todd Browning's life. Look at me, I make you read stuff that's in graphic art form. Another book on the subject is The Big Book of Freaks. There's a link to that. And also a link to the Jim Rose Circus Sideshow, which is a modern sideshow. If you go to Coney Island, which I like to do all summer, hopefully I'll get to do that this summer, you could see they have a recreated freak show. Not so much people who are deformed, but, people swallowing swords, lighting themselves on fire, and doing other cool geek stuff. And you might see some people, the Bearded Lady. We played a show there once. The Bearded Lady loved us. So there's that. Keep looking at your emails. I'm going to do another one of these. I'm going to try to do one for every class and have you just kind of, I'll either find a link to a movie or send you a list of movies that you could watch and give you just a couple of simple questions. Don't go crazy. Just quick, a few sentences on each question just to show that you watched them and that you care. And everybody, stay safe and watch scary movies.